Hello and welcome to the AIDEM Interactions once again. We have the renowned international affairs journalist Saeed Naqvi back in the AIDEM Interactions on what the international media is saying is a very important day for Palestine and Gaza, where a kind of ceasefire has been accepted with the Americans employing a strategic abstention. Right, so what do you make out of this? Of course, Netanyahu has been very angry with this decision. So what do you make out of this whole development?
Look, I mean, either he had squeezed as much as he could out of Washington. Now, Washington was beginning to show its involvement in the Gaza mishap, was beginning to show negative political results back in America. The only reason that Mr. Biden himself was trumped at home is a thing called the Israel lobby. This is something that people talk about but do not understand. The Israel lobby is something that a very distinguished Professor John Mearsheimer of Chicago University and Stephen Ward of Harvard University have brought out this definitive book. It was brought out some time back actually, which is called the Israel Lobby and American Foreign Policy. Now, just as you know, in America, lobbies function. One of the lobbies, for instance, is the National Rifle Association. You have hundreds of children getting hold of these weapons and killing each other in various schools of the United States. And yet, no one can do anything about it because the Rifle Association is so powerful.
Okay.
The most powerful lobby in the world is the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby was able to do the following. I'm giving you the background so that your viewers understand it. If you remember, Barack Obama was resisting Netanyahu coming to Washington, D.C. At that stage.
Right.
He didn't want him there. It was not suiting the international picture as was being sketched by Obama. But despite the President of the United States asking him not to come, he sailed above his head and addressed a joint session of Congress. So this is the power. Now, why was he able to do that? And why is he able to get American support until the last ounce has been taken out? Because every congressman, more or less, depends on the donors. And the donors are the Israel lobby. You see, that is the power. Now the Israel lobby was pushing and asking Biden to pull back from any pressure on Netanyahu. Netanyahu, meanwhile, had his own internal problems. Had he stopped, he was riding a tiger. Had he stopped the war, he would then be convicted for various crimes that he has committed. Now, the additional crime, of course, is that he was asleep when October 7th, Palestinian, the Hamas attack on Israel took place. Where was he? Where was the great celebrated army? Where was the intelligence service? All of that would come up. So he had to relent two things. He had to fight this war. He had to keep riding the tiger. Number one. Number two, this is the last hurrah for Israel. This is the last time they are able to do this? Because Israel in West Asia, which the world calls Middle East wrongly, and which Krishna Menon in fact corrected and said, actually, it is not Middle East to us, it is West Asia to us. So in West Asia, the basic point is that what is Israel to the West? Israel is an unsinkable carrier, is an aircraft carrier, unsinkable, which is planted there. Now, what is happening since Vietnam, since Iraq, since Afghanistan, and since Ukraine now? Ukraine, what is happening is that the hegemon, which had become a hegemon in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, has been going down since 2008.
Okay.
And today, the hegemon is no longer the hegemon. Without American support, Israel will be very hard put to do anything. This is the last time the Americans can give him this kind of limitless support. Why? Because Americans are not in a position, in that position of the hegemon. They are now an acceptedly declining power. That is the state of play. So, whatever has to be done now.
Okay.
Because beyond the American support to Israel becomes very, very dicey and questionable. So much so that don't forget that Saudi Arabia was as close to the Americans. Why? Because in 1945, there was this famous meeting with the first King Saud and Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, in a ship called the Quincy in the Suez Canal in 1945. It's a historic meeting.
Mm.
And a huge document, several pages came out after 2 days of meeting, in which they were going to share the oil, and American power. American power was guaranteed. American supervision, American, shall we say, total support to Saudi Arabia was guaranteed.
Mm.
When I was in Princeton, I used to ask famous professors there, why don't you do something about Saudi? He says, Saeed, we can't, because it's too far deep cavernous arrangements. All right. They were so deep, but yet, what has happened? Under Chinese auspices, Riyadh has gone and shaken hands with the arch enemy of Israel and the United States, namely Iran. So Tehran and Riyadh have shaken hands. Why? Because even Riyadh has seen that this might well be the last hurrah, that the rising global power, the global combination is BRICS. The
Okay.
declining global combination is the G7. So
Right.
they have moved out towards the global south. Who? The Saudis. They are still keeping their options open, but they have moved out. This option is not available to Israel unless it completely reorients itself.
No, but
So therefore, this ceasefire that you're talking about is a historic one. Although because of the Israeli lobby, it is still only for the month of Ramadan, but month of Ramadan ends at the end of the month, and at that time, the Eid is on the 11th of April. So therefore, this particular Ramadan carries on till April at least. In between, many more things will happen. But who is this ceasefire being negotiated with? It has been negotiated between the Israel and Hamas. What is Hamas? Hamas was something that Mr. Netanyahu was going to finish. He was going to finish Hamas, and then otherwise he won't stop. Now he is negotiating a peace with Hamas. So therefore, somewhere inside it are seeds of, just as the Ukraine war is more or less over, but the Americans will not let it be over because the elections are due in November in Washington, and these elections and the Israelis have to continue.
But I had two questions here. But there are sections of international media are saying that Netanyahu is very upset with this ceasefire, and he has already made it public that he is not happy with it. But at the same time, there is a large internal dissension happening between Netanyahu and many of his partners in government, including defense minister
and the army and the armed forces.
So how far have these factors influenced this ceasefire?
These factors are there. He is having internal problem, and Americans can go that far, no further, particularly in the state in which they are. Don't forget, Venkitesh, we are facing three great conflicts. Imperialism is facing three great conflicts. One is Ukraine, which is more or less, according to the American experts, is more or less over, and it is just being pumped on artificial oxygen. It is just kept alive. Ukraine is. Otherwise, it's over. The second imperialism is in Gaza, in the battle that is going on in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians. That's second. And the third is the biggest of the lot, which is not in our sight, because the Western media will not let us see it. What is that war? That is the conflict simmering, building up between white America, black and women in America. This is a lethal mix. Women after on the abortion issue, and the blacks. This is going to lead to an explosion internal. Mark my word, by the time elections come. Just you wait. And so this is the situation in which Mr. Netanyahu has been able to encash as much as he could. And now this piece is yet another. It is not visually as spectacularly defeat like the runaway from Afghanistan was, but it is a defeat nevertheless. Why? Because the global sympathy is for the Palestinians, whom they have killed like animals. They've called them animals. Their leadership has said they are another people. And this completely racist, genocidal war on Gaza is going to recoil very hard on the extreme Israeli. Israel, don't forget, also has a lot of sensible, very intelligent and very sensible people. You read the book by Ilan Pappé on the ethnic cleansing of Jerusalem. He's an Israeli. He lives in Haifa, and he's a fantastic historian. I mean, that book has to be read. So you are now going to, at the end of it, there will be sense. I am optimistic on that one. Now, having said this,
I have a small.
Yes.
You said that Netanyahu, in all probability, is having negotiations with Hamas, and which is not very visible to us at this point of time. But you're saying that these back channels are open, and there's a negotiation happening between Hamas and the.
Was, you know what? Yeah, of course. I mean, who are the peace, the ceasefire is between who? The ceasefire, of course, there's been talked in Cairo and in Qatar, and quietly also in Oman. That is where these conversations are taking place. But between who? Between reps. I mean, there's Netanyahu, his representatives, and the representatives of who are speaking on behalf of Hamas. So you're talking to the people. You say you have finished, number one. Now let me give you the prediction. And the prediction is, as this tapers out, this war, slowly, gradually, sensible people in Israel will prevail, and you will hear, I may be wrong, and you will hear Iranian, and don't forget the Iranians and Israeli, on behalf of Israel, people meeting in Oman or in Switzerland and working some kind of a quiet deal. Have you people forgotten the Iran-Contra deal with the Americans? You see, in the 80s, when the Israelis and the Iranians and the Americans were involved in a whole complex deal so that America could support the Contras against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. I've spoken too much. Now I'm sure you've exhausted your list of questions.
No, I have one more question. I think the last question. What is the role of Hezbollah in this?
Hezbollah, it has not yet opened its fire.
Yeah, but then there is a perception that they're very central to this whole situation.
The dismal situation in which you and I are, that our journalists are not there. If I was there, and at the moment I'm not traveling, otherwise we should be in Lebanon, we should be in Jordan, we should be to see. You know what is going on? Is that North Israel is being emptied. The settlers are running away because of the war that is going on between cross-border, between Hezbollah and the Israelis. So there's people in Israel are beginning to live in camps. That story is not available to you. That story is not available to me because the Western media, controlled by the Israeli lobby, will not tell us that story.
So when do we get to tell that story? Once this settles down, and once you believe that
you go there. Once you make AIDEM big enough so that you can allow your correspondents to go to Lebanon, for heaven's sake. Raise that money. Go there. That is the role you will play.
Thank you, Saeed Saab. Look forward to doing that in some time in the future, maybe in the near future. And of course, we will continue to interact, and we are planning to travel soon together in North India for the elections.